Hello and welcome to our first episode of Classic Game Reviews. In this series we're going to look at the yesteryear of video games, mainly from the 6th generation and even older than that, and shine some light on these great classic titles. Our first game will be a hidden gem of the 6th generation, a third-person shooter by the name of Metal Arms Glitch in the System, which was released in 2003 for the Xbox, GameCube and PlayStation 2 systems, then in 2008 for the Xbox 360 as an Xbox Originals download. Made by a small development house by the name of Swingin' Ape Studios, this was the first and last game they ever made in the company's history before the company was bought by Blizzard Entertainment, the creators of World of Warcraft, and was then closed down. So, what is Metal Arms Glitch in the System? Basically, as stated earlier, it's a third-person shooter which takes place on the planet inhabited only by robots and droids, the planet of Iron Star. Now this game has a lot of story to it, but for the sakes of this video I'll try and avoid all the spoilers and cut it short really, just in case you ever get interested and want to try out this game for yourself. Basically, the planet of Ironstar has many races of robots that live in different cultures. There's the droids, who live in the city called Droid Town. That makes sense. These are the characters that you are allied with and spend most of your time undertaking missions with. There's the Millbots, who are hell-bent on eliminating all droids from Ironstar to take over the planet. Pretty generic. Then there's the Morbots, which is like an ancient race of robots that live in the core of the planet, who generate all of the power in this gigantic futuristic city, sort of like what you see in the movie Tron Legacy. All very cool looking. Again, large story to be told in game, so I won't tell it here. You are an alien robot who goes by the name of Glitch. You have no memory up to the point at the start of the game apart from a remembering of your own name, and immediately get repaired to join the Droid Rebellion, who immediately put you to use as they start getting attacked by the Millbots. Anyway, you're put to the test by going down into the droid mines and blowing up everything in sight, and then reporting back to the droid general, who then sends you out into Droid Town itself to eliminate the rest of the Millbots and save the city. After that, the entire game basically is about eliminating all of the Millbots on the planet of Ironstar once and for all, so Glitch travels far and wide to very immersive locations to undertake missions, who then eventually battles the Millbot leader to save the planet of Ironstar, blah blah blah, game over. Yeah, I know that didn't give up much of the story, but believe me, it's much more than that, and it's very comic and serious at the same time. Speaking of comedy, this game has a lot of it. It's one of those games that tries to be funny and succeeds very well. Lots of humour, funny death sound effects, and loads of silly taunts. It doesn't happen too much, but every time it does, it feels very well done and well directed.
Brave troopers is up to the task. You're kidding me. You two are all that's left. Be on the lookout for Titans. We hear they're mean and ugly. Well, actually, we only heard they're mean, but we didn't figure he's a male, you know.
Will the party or parties responsible for releasing all of the experimental loony bots please return them to their pens? They are shooting the employees. Thank you.
Oh, shit.
Okay, on to the gameplay. It's a third-person shooter in which you complete level after level. Nothing too special there. With equally balanced level playtimes, it gives a very good balance and play speeds for everyone's tastes. Unlike some third-person shooters, the camera isn't directly behind you. It's sort of off to the side a bit, which gives you very good target acquisition and high maneuverability when needed. Pretty much a lot of this game involves shooting at enemies with a high rate of fire, whilst also moving left and right, jumping up and down, doing backflips, basically just being a badass, destroying everything in sight. And boy do you feel awesome every time you blow up the enemy. The animations in this game are top notch, and the sound effects are to match. Everything from machine gun fire to an outright catastrophic explosion just feels amazing.
Your truck is about to bleed over.
Speaking of weapons, there's a lot of weapons to choose from. some of which are unique in a very good way, and it adds a lot of replay value to each story mission, trying out different weapons and tactics and experimenting with them all. Basic weapons include the mining laser, which is the first gun you get in the game. With low power but infinite ammo, it's definitely something that you can have a little plinker with. And then there's the Spoo, which is the machine gun of the game. It's the most often used weapon of the game, best for most situations. Then there's the rocket launchers, not much explanation needed there. There's the rivet gun, which acts as the sniper rifle in this game, very powerful and long range. There's also the scope attachment that you can equip to this and many other weapons in the game to add long range capabilities and enable much more effective accuracy. The scatter blaster, which is, well, it's the shotgun of the game and deals high amounts of damage at very close range. There's also flamethrowers in this game for all you pyromaniacs out there. And then we'll move on to all of the throwing weapons, such as the coring charge, which acts as the generic grenade for the game. The Emp Grenade, which you can use to disorient and disable enemies for a short time, which comes in very handy for the bigger enemies which you encounter later in the game. That is if you're a good throw, because it's got a very short range that it works with. They're also very expensive and rare, these grenades, so you have to spend them wisely. Then there's the cleaner. I'll just let you guys figure out what that does whenever you get this game. There's a few weird, wonderful and unique weapons in this game, such as the Slingshot, which uses grenades that you have equipped to sling them over a longer distance with more accuracy over than simply throwing them, which can benefit the effects of a grenade, only it acts more like a rocket launcher due to the fast speed in which the projectiles fly at enemies. I really like how the Slingshot works. To ready it up, you have to pull down the trigger, and then to release it, you just release the trigger. Really simple. And it gives off a very satisfying sound effect when you launch a grenade at the enemy. I really like that, nice touch. Secondary, there's the control tether. Okay, hang on. Right, I'll talk about this weapon later, as it actually plays quite a big part in the gameplay of Metal Arms, so bear with me on that one. Weapon selection is a breeze with this unique user interface, one that I've never seen in a shooter before. Basically, you use the X and B buttons for Xbox, square and circle buttons for the PlayStation 2 version, and the respective control for the GameCube. You press and hold the right face button to switch between your primary weapons, and you tap it quickly to reload the weapon in hand. And then you use the left face button to select which grenades you use. This I really like, as it gives you the ability to have loads of weapons on your character at the same time, rather than just two, as you see in most games, and it also allows you to select them quickly and effectively. If that's not quick enough for you, you can set up macros for the current weapons that you're currently carrying in your hand. So you could, like, say, set up a rocket launcher and an EMP grenade in one macro, and then have a machine gun in another macro. So this allows you to switch between weapon loadouts during a fight without having to go into any menus. You interact with stuff with the Y button for Xbox or triangle for the PlayStation 2. Again, very simple and very responsive, as you sometimes have to do this in quick succession in order to get out of a tight situation. And of course there's the jump button. You press it once to do a small jump, and you press it twice to do a double jump flip. Depending on which direction you're moving before a double jump, you'll find yourself doing a flip in that direction, so you can do front, back and side flips. During a firefight, you may find yourself having to jump a lot of times, often to avoid rockets and other projectiles that are being fired at you. Well, I guess I better talk about level design. Each level is a point-to-point type of layout. You start the mission at the start of the level, you blast your way through the level, and you reach the end of the level to reach the next. Nice and simple. There's no explorable world, unfortunately. If you're one of those who like open world gameplay, well, unfortunately you're out of luck. Now I might sound like I'm scrutinizing the game for this, but in fact I really like this idea, as I don't think this game would have worked well with an open world design, and although it does limit its inevitable replayability, each mission is still action-packed and fun to play even 10 years after completing this game myself. During each level you can often find secret areas dotted around the map, which most of the time only really offer some extra ammo and weapons, but sometimes they can also contain secret chips. Secret chips are used to unlock extra multiplayer levels, but I'll go more on about that in a bit. One thing I didn't say earlier about weapons is that they're all upgradable, minus a few exceptions, which adds extra damage, ammo capacity, ammo reserves, and even some added effects, such as rockets splitting into multiple smaller rockets for massive damage on the level 3 rocket launcher, which then becomes the barrage cannon. You can also upgrade Glitch's maximum health up to 6 times what you start with at the start of the game, but only if you're able to find all of the upgrades. Don't expect to find them all on your first playthrough though. I'd recommend just playing the game normally and then going back through the levels to find them later. Another upgrade that you can get for Glitch is the arm server upgrade, which basically allows you to reload and switch weapons faster. You don't really have to worry about searching around for the arm server upgrades though. They're usually placed in spots that you can't miss, or you can buy them in the shop. Speaking of shop, I should probably talk about that next. You can visit the washer shop to buy upgrades for your weapons, in which you use washers that you collect either from the ground or from blown up enemies you spend on. You can buy upgrades, ammo, grenades, and health if you're desperate for it, especially on hard difficulty levels. The shop is easy to find due to the banging bass tune that they play when you're nearby. The tune is really catchy and you really can't miss it out of everything else. Speaking of music, this game has a very awesome and unique soundtrack, which consists of mellow but serious background tunes that you can find yourself taking out enemies to, all very atmospheric and very immersive, which I really like. Now on to that control tether I mentioned earlier. Now this is another unique feature of this game which personally I haven't really seen in any other game, minus a few slim amount of exceptions. What the control tether does is it allows you to control enemies, allowing you to remotely control them and use their own firepower against them. You can do this with pretty much any enemy, minus a few exceptions, and a weapon itself has a few purposeful drawbacks to prevent it from being overpowered. You can only control enemies that haven't spotted you prior to you attempting to control them, and you can only do that by sneaking behind them, shooting a lock on their back, or by using an EMP grenade to temporarily disable them while you carry out the capture, which can be risky business, especially if you're trying to capture one of those big enemies who can be very difficult to work with. It's also got a limited wireless range in which you can remotely control the enemy, so it's a powerful tool, but it's not overpowered. And you can get upgrades for the control tether which can resolve a few of the drawbacks, which is pretty cool. Now every good shooter always has its vehicles, and this one is no exception. There's the RAT, or the Rapid Armor Transport, which is very fast and has a machine gun turret on the back. There's the Sentinel, which is the tank of the game, complete with a machine gun and a cannon. Then finally there's the Loader, which is some kind of hovercraft crabby clawmobile, which when driving you can pick up enemies and shoot them when you've got them clamped at close range to deal extreme damage. Vehicles aren't really seen much in the single player campaign, they play more of a role in the multiplayer aspect of the game, which I'll just move on to now. Up to 4 players on one screen can duke it out in all manners of versus game modes, or even 2-on-2 team game modes. For the Xbox and GameCube versions you can have up to 4 players, but for some reason, even when you plug in a multi-tap, you can't play 4-player on the PlayStation 2 version of the game, which only allows for up to 2-player split screen, which I find kinda weird, but the PlayStation 2 version does include one extra versus map as a minor comeback compared to the other platforms. Multiplayer is really fun, and it allows you to use the control tether on any robots that are all deactivated for easier remote control. with infinite range, which can result in some very interesting battles. As stated earlier, you can unlock all of the multiplayer levels in the single player aspect of the game by collecting secret chips. Collecting enough to unlock every multiplayer level is pretty darn difficult, but if you really wanted to, like I did, I just used a strategy guide to help me find them all. And definitely worth it, because in the last level you unlock, you can play as the final boss in the game, but I won't show this due to spoiler reasons. Unfortunately, the multiplayer on the Xbox version of the game, despite its hardware capable of playing online, they never added Xbox Live support for the game, or even just LAN play, so everything has to be done on one screen. Not too much of a downside, especially with classic Xbox Live now shut down. I think a LAN play feature would have been a worthwhile feature. Graphics wise, this game is pretty good for its generation of gaming. Smooth 60 frames rendering makes it all the better. The water in this game looks especially cool, and the level of detail in most levels is very complex in a lot of areas, but it handles very well, especially on the Xbox version of the game, mainly because the Xbox was the more powerful console of the 6th generation. Well, all in all, what do I think of this game? It's one of those games that you play if you're wanting to have a unique, simple and fun to play adventure that you can just sit down on a night and play, with tons of action and comedy in as well. The only downsides to this game is the inevitable limited replayability and the multiplayer that's very basic indeed. I think if they added at least LAN play for the multiplayer aspect of the game, this would have been a 10 out of 10, but for this review, I'm going to give it a 8 out of 10. That about wraps up our first episode of Classic Game Reviews. I hope to see you next time.